Well, good afternoon. My name is Sergeant Ken Lattin with the Kennewick Police Department. I am the spokesperson for the Special Investigations Unit here in the Tri-Cities. This is Franklin County Prosecutor Shawn Sant, and we've got some updates on the investigation today. So first of all, I want to just lay some ground rules. We do have some extra people in the crowd. Please remember this is a press conference, a media briefing, and so all questions will come from the legitimate members of the media here today, out of respect for all of them that have made the trip here today. To update from last week, we had several very good questions asked by the media that I had said I would follow up on, and so I have. I'm just going to run through these 5 questions that were given to me and try to answer this. So first of all, the question was, were the officers wearing body cameras? No, they were not. There was a dash cam video, and we're still in the process of collecting not just the involved officers, but all dash cam videos. Talking about videos, I was asked last week, how many videos do we have? And we've got, obviously, dash cam videos in the patrol cars. We have social media videos that we've all seen posted on YouTube and other social media sites. So that number continues to grow. We have been sent additional videos this week that people have taken, and that is fantastic. The more information that we have, the better. And I'll talk more about witnesses in just a minute. Another question was asked, was Mr. Zambrano Montez, was he here in the country legally? That is information that will be included in the final report, but you have to understand, not pertinent to the investigation. We will investigate this case whether he was here legally or not. It doesn't matter. We will investigate this case the same way. Another question was, were there restraining orders against him? Again, will be included in the final report, not pertinent to the immediate part of the investigation. It doesn't matter what his legal status was, what sort of legal troubles he'd had in the past. We're investigating this, again, as a homicide, death at the hands of another person, and his legal status will be taken into account, but not pertinent to the immediate investigation. You asked for a list of all the SIU investigators that were included in this investigation, and so that'll be sent out to you. Actually, it was sent out to you already just before we started. I clicked the send button. So you have those on your computers back at work. Those investigators were all aware. Their names were sent out, and none of them had issues with their names being released. Another question was, were the officers involved, the 3 officers from Pasco, were they Spanish speakers? They have to understand, a lot of people speak Spanish, like myself. I took Spanish in high school and college and can speak a little bit. I can communicate with most people, but I am by no means a certified Spanish speaker. And that's really all most agencies track, is who's a certified Spanish speaker that can be used as an interpreter. So in this case, those 3 officers, not certified Spanish speakers. I don't know the status of if they knew Spanish. I don't know if they gave any commands in Spanish. That'll be information that we hope may have been captured on the dash cams, because they were all wearing microphones, and so that may have been captured, and we're working on that question. Getting back to witnesses, we have a lot. So as I mentioned last week, we're at about 40 approximately witnesses. You have to understand that of those 40 that we've talked to so far, the majority of those interviews have been completed, so roughly about 90% of those have been completed. The process of having those interviews, which were recorded, transcribed, is in the works. That can take several weeks to get those done. But you have to note also that of those 40, really only a small handful were actual eyewitnesses. Now this is a bit of a problem for us, because as you can see, as we all have seen in the videos that were posted, a lot of people were there. This was a busy time of the afternoon. A lot of people in cars. Now maybe some of those people didn't see anything, but we hope that everybody would please come forward and share what they know, share what they saw. That's all a valuable part of this investigation. More about witnesses. We set up the hotline last week. It has fielded about 23 calls so far. Of those, only 3 were actually witnesses to the event. Most wanted just to share their opinions, both positive and negative, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. We don't want to discourage anybody from calling, but just know that it's only netted about 3 actual witnesses there. As we talk about witnesses, again, that's really what's going to tell this story. We need more. And we just don't want to say I need more witnesses. I want to be specific about what we're looking for. What we don't know at this point is where and what Mr. Zambrano Montez was doing, the hours, the days, the weeks leading up to this incident, leading up to February 10th. His family has not been able to account for us where he was 2 weeks prior. He had been staying off and on at the mission over the past months, but they can't account for him in the 2 weeks leading up to. So that information, especially the hours, but we want to know the days and even the weeks, what was he doing? That helps us tell the story. So people who may be able to relay that information to us, they are key witnesses and we'd like to talk to them. One more set of witnesses. So of course we've seen a lot of these videos that were posted. And you have to understand that we have to forensically save those videos. It's not enough for us just to take them off YouTube. We have to actually find out who took it, collect it forensically from their phone. We're just taking an image, we're not collecting the phone. We just need to image the phone so that the detectives can preserve that forensically so it can be presented later if the prosecutor needs that. So we have not identified some of those really key those videos that came out day one, hours after the incident. In some of those videos we have not identified who the originator was. You can tell who posted it on YouTube, but it doesn't tell us who originated it. So I'm asking this, if you took videos, if you posted them, and you've already talked to the police, and you've shared your information, and they've imaged your phone, taken a copy of that, perfect, we got it down. If you haven't, please contact SIU, and so they can collect that evidence. That is crucial. So what's happened since last time we got together? So first of all, you need to know that our partners at the Washington State Crime Lab have done a phenomenal job. Normally, and I don't want to set this unrealistic expectation, normally this would take several weeks. They have put this at the top of their priority list in the state. So the Cheney Crime Lab opened their doors Saturday. We sent our evidence technician up Saturday and Sunday with evidence that'll need to be analyzed. Obviously, there's other cases in the state, unfortunately, have been put to the back burner. But we are now at the top of the priority list. So we hope to have information back from the crime labs sooner rather than later. And I'll just finish with this. So it's still actively investigated. The majority of the investigators are still working on this case. We appreciate the patience of the public. We appreciate the respect that people have shown each other in the other activities, the demonstrations, the protests that have occurred. Appreciate the trust that the public has put in the Special Investigations Unit, and we will continue to move forward. And with that, I think I'm going to let Shawn Sant say a few words about his portion of the investigation.
Thank you. Just as an update, one of the questions that came forward later was when would we release the body back to the family. Obviously, with anybody that is deceased and we've had to conduct an autopsy, it's our goal to, one, get the investigation concluded and make sure that we have all the evidence that needs to be collected and gathered before we make that determination to release. We've coordinated also with our federal partners, with the U.S. Attorney's Office, State Attorney General's Office, just to see if there was any concerns from their end, if we needed to hold on to the body. We have given our approval to release. I have been advised that it sounds like the family involved has requested an independent autopsy. Sometimes that does take place in a case. It certainly wouldn't be the first case to do a second autopsy, and probably won't be the last, but certainly we're going to allow that and try to accomplish that second autopsy as soon as possible. That may, cause some additional delays as far as getting those pathology reports back, but that's certainly going to be important for our office. Ultimately, when we receive the SIU reports, pathology is obviously very important, especially on a case like this, as with any other homicide. So we are going to, that may cause a slight delay, but I think in interest of everything moving forward, it sounds like that should take place in the near future. We anticipate that assisting this process to continue to move along. The other thing that our office has been contacted about is the concern for witnesses. It's really important for people to understand. One of the goals that I think we've had and established in our community is the importance of being able to work with victims of crime, work with witnesses of crime that may not be here with documentation. In other words, people that might not be here legally, they have concerns in talking with law enforcement. We have done a very good job, I think. We could certainly obviously do better, but our outreach to the Latino community has been that if you've been a victim of a crime or if you've been a witness to a crime, if you cooperate with that investigation, you cooperate with any prosecution that might come later, there's a process in my office that I usually work with, like Northwest Immigrants' Rights Project. We work with something called a U visa, and what that simply does is it doesn't grant citizenship, it doesn't grant legal status, but it's a tool that we use to basically indicate to the immigration and customs folks that this individual has cooperated with law enforcement, they were a victim of a crime themselves, and that allows some additional time to continue or allow the legal process to take place. So I want that to be out there because I recognize there could be a lot of witnesses. As Sergeant Lattin indicated, this occurred at a busy time of day, very busy intersection, one of our busiest in Pasco. So we anticipate there's probably a lot of other witnesses out there that may have saw something and they might be hesitant to come forward. So we clearly want to make sure that we have all witnesses, and if there is a concern for that, I just want to let that go out there that we've worked with several of our attorneys in the community that specialize essentially in immigration work, and we will continue to work with them in processing paperwork. Sometimes this is for crimes that have occurred several years before, but I think it's important in our office and in our community especially that people understand that, look, just because you're not here legally, if you've been a victim or you cooperate, we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that that gets part of consideration. As far as the other timelines we've talked about, it's really hard to guess. Like Sergeant Lattin indicated, this has the highest priority at the state level. The state lab is working things quite quickly compared to other serious cases, and this is a serious case. So we will continue to wait for that. Toxicology will come in, and that's a necessary report from the state toxicology lab before the pathologist can conclude their report. So again, that's kind of the process where we're at right now. Most important thing for us, I believe, is just to make sure that we can identify, get all these witness interviews concluded so that the SIU investigation can conclude as quickly as possible, and then, of course, send that off to our office. So.
With that, any questions?
Yeah.
Have you had to subpoena any video from anyone, or has it been fairly easy to obtain?
I think it's safe to say that people have been voluntarily sharing it with us, yeah, which is good, and we want that. We want to work with the public and get that information.
Can you talk about the amount of evidence and the type of evidence that was sent to the state lab?
So obviously, I think we talked about last week, all of the officers' uniform, including all their gear, boots, weapons, all that was sent off. As Mr. Sant mentioned, you have the toxicology was sent. Bullet fragments, they were collected at the scene. Taser cartridges will be sent off for analysis. I'm probably leaving some stuff out of that. It really is a mountain of evidence.
I understand you have a quote from the DOJ that you were planning to share today.
So we have been in contact with the FBI. The question is, should the DOJ, the FBI, take over the investigation? You should know that we are in close contact with them. This was their quote that they gave me from their media relations coordinator from the FBI Seattle division. The FBI is aware of the Pasco police shooting incident. The FBI is monitoring the investigation of this use of force conducted by the Tri-City Special Investigations Unit, comprising several law enforcement agencies in the region. So they are monitoring. They are talking frequently with our lead investigator. So if they choose to come in and take over, they certainly can. Right now, they're just monitoring.
Has anything gone on in those conversations to lead you to believe that the DOJ or FBI is planning to come in at all?
Right now, they're just using the word monitoring. That was their quote, which she does clarify. She says what monitoring means to them is We're following the investigation by the locals because its resolution will determine if we need to get further involved.
Can you put a more specific number on the amount of videos you have?
No, because that number continues to grow. So we have dash cam videos from the patrol cars, and I include all patrol cars that were working that day. And so they're still in the process of collecting that, which cars had cameras, which didn't, and which may not have recorded. So that's being collected. The YouTube videos that we've seen, they continue to come in to us. There seems to be more out there. So that continues to be a moving target.
Have all the bullet fragments been accounted for from that day that were discharged?
I'm sorry?
Have all the bullet fragments been accounted for that were discharged that day? Were they all sent to the crime lab? We tracked all of those down.
So we did talk about that. They've accounted for all the bullet fragments.
Well, I guess when you say all the bullet fragments, I haven't seen that information. When you say fragments, there could be fragments that might not have been collected, but anything that was gathered from the investigation would have been sent off to the lab, and that's for a firearms expert at the State Patrol Crime Lab to probably determine if fragments compile any bullets, to make up for it.
But everything discharged that day from the officers' weapons has been found.
So I think, can we account for all the bullets that were fired? Yes. We know where they all went.
Do you have an idea when pictures of the officers' injuries will be available to us?
I don't, but I'll work on that for next week. That's a good question.
Have the officers made their statements to the special investigations unit yet?
So not yet. Another good question. You have to understand that the investigators that will interview them need to know all the details first. And so that's still coming in. And so that date is yet to be set yet. We're still collecting information. That's why it's so critical for any further video that's out there, for any further witnesses that are out there, to come in and contact us as soon as possible. We want to have a complete picture of what we know before we set the officers down and interview them.
Is it clear that all 3 officers discharged their weapons at the scene?
I think we can see in the video that all 3 weapons discharged.
Do we know how many bullets were found in Mr. Zambrano's body?
That'll be part of the report from the coroner and the medical examiner that, as Mr. Sant specified, can't be released until they get the toxicology report.
Shawn, the last 2 investigations that you've been a part of, I've been in your office, I've seen mounds of paperwork that are involved in this. What is the average cost on something like this in terms of the Special Investigating Unit's report and investigation? Any idea?
Well, when you ask for cost, obviously it does take time. It's time in our office. Obviously, a lot of time is after what people might say are normal working hours. Many of the deputies in my office do work past the typical workday of 5 o'clock as they have trials. Obviously, this case is going to have a big priority with our office, so there's going to be a lot of time and effort, not just by myself, but other members of my team in the office. And so it'll take some time to go through. And as you indicated, some of those cases don't have nearly the number of witness statements. I think, as we said last week, part of the protocol that SIU tries to follow is getting recorded witness statements. Those statements then are condensed to being transcribed, so it's easy for everybody to review and have all that information. And it will take some time because, like you said, they are very thick notebooks that come to the office. There's going to be, the more videos that come available, the more car cams that had recordings in the patrol cars, those all will be reviewed, along with 911 calls, the radio logs, the data terminal transmissions. There's a bunch of information that will come in, and that all needs to be looked at for us to have a thorough review.
Any idea?
We're all salaried. Everybody in my office is salary. If we have to have our support staff that are hourly, we might have to seek authorization to get additional overtime approved within our office, but that just comes with the job that I signed up for. Is I put in the hours as they're needed.
So the agreement that SIU has with all of the agency, all the chiefs and sheriffs, is when these investigations happen, each agency is responsible for their own detectives' salary. So we all share the cost.
Shawn, can you say if people who are undocumented in this country come to your office or to the SIU to give testimony, are they liable to be to get into legal trouble with the federal government?
As I've said before, is our goal is not to enforce the immigration laws. That's not our role as the prosecutor's office. We're trying to take all information. We've had other cases. One of the biggest cases that came out in the community was Tony Martinez, not too long ago where there was an exploitation amongst a lot of undocumented folks that had sought out immigration services from an individual that held himself out as being an attorney. So just like we did in that case, people came to our office, they cooperated with law enforcement, they gave statements. After the process concluded, we've granted U visas or signed off on U visas. So we would treat this case just the same like we've treated several other cases before.
And last week you guys said you were still looking into whether Antonio Zambrano had a rock in his hand when he was shot. Is there any update as to that aspect of the investigation?
No update on that portion yet.
Are you commenting on why the coroner has started an inquest? We understand it's quite rare. Are you commenting on what you may have found that might have caused you to start that inquest?
That'd probably be a good question for the coroner.
If you can account for all the bullets, how many shots were fired by the officers?
I think that will be part of the report that needs to come from the medical examiner, as far as his report from the medical examiner.
Going off Chris's question, I know he's asked specifically about a rock, but at this point, are you confirming he had something in his hands, whether it be keys or anything?
You can watch the video that we all have seen, and there is some sort of shadow there. But we won't really know any of that conclusive until they're able to enhance that video and slow it down frame by frame. So we hope to have a more conclusive answer to that. Right now, that's still inconclusive.
Was the only place that he was shot in the torso?
Let's take this question first. So I think that's, your question was, again, say it please.
Was the only place he was shot was in the torso? Was there any other bullet wounds?
So I think that'll still come out with the medical examiner's report, which still is waiting on the toxicology report before he can release that. Back here.
How many shots were fired total during the
I don't know that we can comment on that yet conclusively.
Yeah, I would be hesitant without having that report from the pathology as well as the SIU report. That's going to have those kind of details in the report.
Just can you tell us, excuse me, can you tell us how many officers actually shot? Did all 3 officers shoot, or few of you?
So based on what you see in the YouTube video, which is what I would be referring to, okay? Because again, we don't have the reports back from the crime lab, who has the weapons, who can verify which guns fired. That's part of that analysis. So what I can see in the YouTube video, as you did, it appears that all 3 did. That is still inconclusive yet. That's just what we see on social media.
Just wanted to clarify. So you said that the investigation on this, your side, your special unit side, is already completed, or is it?
No. No, today's just an update. The investigation is still continuing.
Yeah, but what I mean, what was it that you were waiting for the second autopsy? The autopsy is already completed?
Right. The investigation had the initial autopsy within a few days after the incident. Now, the family has requested that a second autopsy come in, and we're certainly going to allow that to happen. When that happens, I don't know, but it's probably going to be in the very near future. And we'll also want to wait till we have the reports from that pathology report to review that. At least from my office's perspective, I'd want to have all information available. Just like witnesses, if there's 2 pathology reports, we're going to want to have those before we're able to proceed forward with our review of the evidence. So that's going to be critical for us as well.
When you do complete with the investigation, has any departments or even Mexican consulate asked for a copy of the investigation, or will you be voluntarily sharing that with groups who ask?
I could comment on that. The Mexican consul has actually reached out to us specifically. They're going to have they've requested a meeting with me personally. I've met with the Mexican consul before. This case is no different. We've established a very good relationship in our community with them, apprising them of things that we're trying to do within our office. One of the discussions we've had previously in our community was talking about the U visas, and they're very pleased to understand that, hey, our intent is to try to work well with people that are here. Obviously, most of the people in our community are those people that want to follow the laws. They want to get legal papers so that they can fully participate, and we certainly have an interest, I think, in making our community better by assisting that. And obviously, in cases like this, we want to make sure people obviously come forward and they're not afraid or have concerns that maybe something adverse will happen. But we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we get that information from them and assist them.
So
Sergeant Lattin.
I had a question back here, I think.
Some people in the community have expressed a measure of concern over the use of force and about their own personal safety. Does the police have any message you'd like to give to the broader community?
We totally understand the concern, both not just here locally, but on the national scale, the concern the public has, and we're working to try and address those concerns and provide the citizens some comfort. At the end of the day, we do work for the citizens. We have been sworn in to uphold, keep the safety, protect their rights, and we expect all of our officers to do that. And so our message to our officers right now is go out, police with compassion, with integrity, and regardless of what anybody may say to you, do the right thing. And now more than ever, show everybody who we are and that we can be fair, we can be just. We need to work at that to educate the public a little better.
I'd like to follow up with that as well, because I think it's important to understand. In our community about this time last year, in 2014, it was actually Valentine's Day, we had a shooting that took place in Pasco by an unarmed man that had forced his way into a home. The homeowner felt in reasonable fear of harm, that both his personal safety as well as the safety of his family was in danger, and he actually shot the individual, and that individual died. Now, we reviewed that case just like we will review this case. We look at the totality of circumstances. We look at reasonableness based on the considerations. That case, his wife was actually on the phone with 911 at the time. You could hear the shots being fired. That individual was not taken into custody. That individual, cooperated in the investigation. The parties were separated, so it wasn't like there was some kind of collaboration. But we look at that case just like any other homicide. Again, that case is ruled as a homicide. Somebody died as a result of the acts of another individual. But I think that's the commitment that we have, at least from my office, is that we're going to review this thoroughly. And that's going to require us to look at all evidence, not just the video. We have several cases that come to our office where we have what we think is very helpful. We have it on video. Our DUI, we have several traffic stops. They're captured on DUI video. But, some of those cases actually go to trial where you think, well, wait a minute, it's on video. You got the guy stumbling out of his car. You've got the slurred speech. You've got the breath test that shows that they're way over the legal limit. What's the point of a trial? That's the important part about our system of justice, is we need to make sure that we review every piece of evidence. Before we make a decision, I take that very seriously.